My name is Tom Simpson. I am a log AD for a GAP. I am in the SoCal region, and I am also the facilitator for the Pacific Division Logistics Work Group. I'll turn it over to Chuck.
Hi, I'm Chuck Bennett. I am the logistics lead for the Cascades region, Oregon and Southwest Washington. And I've been a facilities manager on quite a few DR responses, logistics facilities all over the country. And that's about it for now. So yeah, I guess I will get started. So thank you all for joining. I see there's quite a few of you from California, and some names I'm recognizing there because I've done a couple of DRs in Northern California, like many of you I'm sure have. And I'm also curious, well, I'm guessing that there's quite a bit of a range of experience out there. So if it's a little too basic for you, that's fine. But if I start using some acronym or something just doesn't make sense to you, feel free to ask a question. You can either raise your hand or you can put a question in chat there, and Eway will ask the questions at the appropriate times there. So we'll go ahead and get started. We'll get to our next screen here. See, oh, my screen is going to work. There we go. All right, so here's what we hope to accomplish today. We're going to do the who, what, where, when, why about opening inspection. We're going to actually talk about some of the ins and outs of actually how to do an inspection. We're going to discuss an agreement, discuss the importance of that. We're going to discuss what the closing walkthrough is about and the importance of doing that. And then a little bit just about overall facilities usage. And we're going to try to cover not only just shelter facilities, but any of the facilities that the Red Cross might use on a DR. First of all, we're going to get to the what. What is an opening inspection? Well, it really has to be done in person in this virtual world. It's one of those things that you got to do a walkthrough in person, and it should be a Red Cross representative, of course, and it's this physical observation. You're also going to have a property owner representative there. As most of you know, probably all the Red Cross facilities that we use on a DR, well, not all of them, but a very high percentage of them are not our Red Cross owned buildings. We don't own shelter sites. We don't own warehouses. Well, we have a few warehouses, but most of these buildings that we use on a DR are borrowed buildings. So we borrow those. We hopefully get them donated to us in most cases, and so we meet the property owner down there to do an opening inspection when we're first opening a facility. And so that opening inspection is going to include, it's going to be a document to document any pre-existing facility issues. So the next question, who should do an opening inspection? Well, if you happen to be a logistics facilities person, of course you can do that. But quite often, especially during the initial stages of a disaster response, there's not that many logistics facilities workers out there. So whoever is, let's say it's at a shelter, then it could be the shelter manager actually doing the opening inspection. If it's not a shelter site, if it's a headquarters site or a warehouse site or some other type of a site, then it could be whoever the site manager is. And it could be the first on-scene person, because you might be a DAT worker or something, and you're rushing out to try to open a shelter or something like that. So that that's quite often it's going to be some local regional worker that can get to this site first when it's first opening up. So where and when do opening inspections occur? Well, they can occur at shelter sites and they can occur at any of our other sites. And they actually must occur at any of our other sites that we use on a disaster response, which it could be headquarters site, could be feeding sites, could be warehouse sites, service delivery sites of any sort, where we have Red Cross workers working on site, in a parking lot even, it could be. And when, as to the when, this is very important. When is, we really want to do that opening inspection before we start any of our Red Cross operations. That's highly important, as you can imagine, or you will be able to imagine in a minute here. So like this is a empty gymnasium, typical one we might use as a shelter site. And this is a operating shelter, obviously this picture. So if you're going to do an inspection of this place, you know, you have to ask yourself, when is the best time to do this? When you can see the condition of the floor, the walls, and there's not a bunch of people running around and distracting you too. It's just going to be you, and in this case, it might be the school principal or the school facility manager. In this case, we've already set up a shelter, so it would be much more difficult. But if you get to a shelter and you're the shelter manager and you find out that no opening inspection was done, then it's time to do one. So you can either try to find a logistics facilities worker or have to get together and do one yourself. So you're going to have to make all kinds of notes on it, as far as not being able to see the condition of the floor, perhaps. So why do an opening inspection? That's a good question. Anybody want to take a guess? Put in the chat window why should we do an opening inspection in a facility before we use it on a disaster response? Go ahead, type away. This is the interactive part of the class. I know many of you are fast typers.
While everyone's typing, I'm just going to ask a real quick question. We have a question Richard is asking, does a owner representative have to be present for opening inspection? What happens if the timing doesn't work out?
Then I'll discuss that in a minute, but basically, if there's no way for them to be present, then you could do one. But then, as soon as they could be present, you would want to meet them and discuss the opening inspection with them. Any kind of pre-existing damage you found, especially, and things like that.
So we have several comments on the chat answers. Reasons are for liabilities, so that we don't get blamed for damages that are already there. So then we don't have to buy new gym floors, damage not listed, and etc., and for disability integrations. So we know how to return them. Many of us that recommend, not recommend, has said that so that we won't be charged for the damage that was pre-existing.
Yeah, I'm able to read through these comments too. They're excellent comments. So this was, I even saw one on safety. So safety is always the big thing. We don't want to open a facility that isn't safe. We want our clients to be safe. We want our Red Cross volunteers to be safe. And then most of all, we want our logistics facilities workers to be safe when they arrive. Just kidding. Clients and all volunteers are equally important there. Accessibility, yeah, that's part of the opening inspection. You're gonna hopefully, well, this is probably gonna confuse some people because maybe you've heard of a shelter survey, and A survey is different from an opening inspection. So just wanted to be clear, because an opening inspection is just something you're doing briefly right there at the scene before you open a place. A survey is a very thorough document where you're surveying many details to the building and trying to make an overall assessment of, is this going to be a good building for a shelter in the future or not. So it's a lot more in-depth, and you have a lot more time to do a survey, I'll put it that way. So the opening inspection and the survey also includes all these accessibility items. So if you get to a shelter site and you're doing an opening inspection and somebody has already done a good shelter survey of that place, it's going to make your job a lot easier. But at any rate, part of the opening inspection, what you need to accomplish is to make sure it is accessible. We definitely don't want somebody to show up at our shelter in a wheelchair, or somebody that's sight impaired and have to turn them down because it's not safe for them to be there, or they can't move around. So that's a very important factor. Liability, of course, as many people mentioned, we don't want to be liable for pre-existing damages. And it just helps, the overall process really helps in building our relationship with the property owner. We're walking around and look, we're discussing their building with them and discussing many of the aspects of that building, little storage closets here and there that you might not have even known where they had some things available, and also what portion of the building maybe is off limits to us or stuff like that. Okay. So we're going to get to a little bit of the how to do an opening inspection. So first step, you want to call and get the property representative to meet you there. You want to bring a copy of the form. Now the form has on the back of it the closing inspection form, but it's a two-sided piece of paper. But it's really like two different forms. So you don't have to necessarily worry about doing the closing and the opening on the same piece of paper necessarily. It can be done on two separate pieces of paper. Then you're going to actually do the walkthrough with the property representative. I have seen opening inspections where there was, the form was filled out. It was done as a solo thing by some Red Cross person, well-meaning Red Cross volunteer, but they never even called, or, as far as I could tell, talked to the facility representative at all. So, but that's a very important step there, to have them present. And like I said, if they're absolutely not available, then we can discuss it with them as soon as possible after the fact. So as you're doing these walkthroughs, if there's anything of interest, especially any safety hazard or any damage issue, we want to take pictures. You want to complete fill out the inspection form, of course. And so when you take these pictures and you fill out the inspection form, what do you do with them? Do you just kind of keep them to yourself, put them in your briefcase or on your back part of your clipboard and forget about them? Unfortunately, that sometimes happens. But no, you don't want to do that. So you want to make sure the site manager or the shelter manager has a copy of it. And the original should go to the logistics section, the logistics facility section. And if you are, too far away for that to happen, then it can be just an emailed copy is just fine. And also the photographs. Please share those photographs. You can download them on the team site, or you could send them in an email version, or just directly from your phone, a text version, whatever. But it's really good to have those pictures to go along with the opening inspection. Like number 7 here, I said, well, put on SharePoint. That was from a couple years back, before we really used Microsoft Teams quite a bit. So that's going to be the major source where we share files now, is on Teams, which is all hooked into SharePoint, I guess. So next, inspecting the facility. So did, I don't know if everybody had a chance to look at the actual inspection form ahead of time or not, but I do have, this is the heading of what it looks like, and it's pretty self-explanatory, the name of the facility and address, name of the facility representative, that again, that's going to be the church pastor, the school principal, or somebody that's representing that actual facility, not the Red Cross person. That goes right in the top there, and their cell phone number. It's very important to get that. And email address, you could add that too if you had it. We're not going to go down this whole checklist here, but what I want to point out is that you can, like our indoor, I'm not sure if you can even read this. Is that legible on there? Can anybody tell me?
Yes.
So are the indoor and outdoor walking surfaces free of trip and fall hazards? So, you can check yes or no. Not applicable. I'm not sure you could ever check that one on that particular one, but you might be able to. And U is unknown. So, and there's a little tiny box here to write in comments. And if it doesn't fit in that little tiny box, which most comments won't, you can put it down in the bottom here. But if it doesn't fit down the bottom here, if you got a place with quite a few issues, then you can certainly say see attached page and write it on an additional just blank piece of paper, or type it up even if you had to. So some of these questions like, are the utility systems in good working order, electricity, water, sewage system, HVAC? How are you going to find that out? Are you going to go in and start, getting your electrical tester out and go into the control panel? Or, no, you're not. But you can ask that's another reason to have the building representative with you. You can ask them, have you had any problems with your heating, your air conditioning, things like that. When you go to look at the restrooms, it would be very beneficial to double check, make sure they all work, all the sinks work, toilets work, stuff like that. Because guess what happens if they are not working when we're doing the closing inspection? We're going to get blamed for that. And we actually do break those things during shelters. We can be kind of hard on the plumbing sometimes. Somebody I saw in the comments mentioned parking lots. Yeah, if you're just using a parking lot only, definitely do an opening inspection still. We can be very hard on parking lots, and parking lots are very expensive to repair. So we definitely should also do one if we're just doing the feeding in a parking lot. Any other questions that you've seen on there? Anyway,
I don't. I just saw the question that you answered. You can keep going.
Okay, I will. Uh-oh. I just there. Is that picture showing up with the parking lot now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a actual disaster headquarters in Nebraska, and this is a picture of the parking lot. So you're doing your opening inspection. Would this be important to note on your opening inspection? Yes, absolutely. because even though it's a headquarters, we had a little warehouse in the back and we had trucks in and out all day long. And this parking lot was already in pretty poor condition to start with, and we made it a little bit worse, but we wouldn't want to be blamed for having to repave it. In most cases, you know, the facility operators, you're doing a walk around with them and you see something like this, he's going to say, oh yeah, you know, that parking lot's a mess. I don't care about it. I don't care if you guys do destroy it or not. But these types of things are definitely important to note on the opening inspection. This was one, this was a headquarters in Fort Myers, Florida, before we opened it. And this was going to be in the break room area, the snack room area for the volunteers. And it just shows some floor damage where they used to have a refrigerator there, and the refrigerator was taken out of the facility. But so this was just a picture I took, and you just make a note of it on the form that there's some floor damage in the break room area. This was some pencil, or actually was like engravings on a wall. And this was actually on a closing inspection. We wound up paying a couple $100 to have that repainted because it couldn't be washed off. Carpets are never a good thing in Red Cross facilities, but we can't avoid it sometimes. So here's like a typical stain. This was actually a pre-existing stain that was documented, but many times we'll have coffee stains and whatnot to deal with after a facility is used. Well, that's all the pictures I have for now. Like I said, the main issue with these opening inspections is to do it thoroughly. If you do have a logistics worker, facilities worker that can come out and do it, that's great. And if you don't have one, if you feel free to call one. If there is anybody listed on the, you know, instant action plan in your DR or something, feel free to call them and work with your logistics team as much as possible. That's what we really encourage. And when the logistics workers do, if they, you know, are not at the DR in the first couple of days and some of these opening inspections get done, then they should be kind of making the rounds and doing the follow-up to trying to collect those forms and work through any pre-existing issues and things like that. So next is going to be the facility use agreement. Tom, are you ready?
I am ready. Let me get my camera up here a little bit.
So before we move to the next section, we do have a question in the chat. What happens if the school gym doesn't have a floor cover? Do we purchase tarps?
That's going to be kind of a case-by-case scenario, depending on the condition of the gym floor. Normally in a shelter, we would want to tarp it, but we've also got to be very careful of the tarping procedures too, so the tarps themselves don't cause damage. You want to put them down with the proper tape and, you know, not use duct tape. Duct tape is our enemy. Unless you're duct taping two low quality tarps together, you can do that, but no, just don't duct tape them to the floor. Yeah, anything else, Tom, that you can think of there?
That's probably what we have to do. We have to find some way to cover that floor.
Okay, and another question, I think this is pretty relevant. If we're not the original one that opened the shelter, we're taking this, you know, county opened the shelter or city opened the shelter that we're taking over. When will this inspection happen when we take over? Are we expecting the inspection to have already happened, or do we do a new inspection?
at the time it becomes a Red Cross managed facility, we need to do a opening inspection at that time. And that's even way more important under that condition, because yeah, we've been on the hook for literally 6-figure damages due to what was probably other people running the shelter before we got there. So yeah, and sometimes that's not, it's not a finite time, right? It's not like, oh, we took over at exactly 8 a.m. Sunday morning. Maybe it was sometime during the night, but as close as we can get to when we took it over, that would be the best time stamp to have on that opening inspection.
Okay, thank you. We can move forward.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Like I said, my name is Tom Simpson. I'm going to give you a little bit different view of the facility use agreement. I'm not going to go over the step by step, but just a little bit. Why is it important? The first thing and most important thing to remember on the facility use agreement, it is a legal document. It should not be altered without the approval of risk management or the office of the general counsel. So when some owner wishes to modify our facility use agreement, we need to try to communicate with them that we've been using this in Red Cross for years, and it covers the owner, and we will make it good for them and make it enjoyable for them. But also, if they want to add anything in there, it's going to have to be approved by the risk management and the office of the general counsel. So I did put a copy of the agreement in the chat area, so if you want to at a later time, you can open it up. The very first page when you go onto the exchange is some instructions that can give you some background information, but we're going to basically go in why each certain sections are very, very important. So the very first section we're going to cover is the owner and Red Cross representation for legal notices. That's whose name is the owner, who will receive, if there's some type of claim either way, who will the owner contact with Red Cross, and who will Red Cross communicate as the owner. So we want to make sure that we know who the owner is, the address to be sent to, and contact information. So the contact information could be someone on the DR, but we definitely want to make sure that we have the correct address and the owner of the facility in that particular location. Okay. Onto the next section. Next slide, please. Chuck, you controlling the?
Yes, I'm trying, but I've seemed to have lost control for a minute. Here. Let me, I'm not sure what's going on here. I'll just reshare it, see if it, okay. I don't know, something locked up.
So the way you communicate with risk management and the office of the general counsel is through the Disaster Logistics Center. They have a 24/7 phone number and email, so all you have to do is when the email, put the changes that the owner wishes and then pass that along to the Disaster Logistics Center, and then they will start the ball rolling with risk management and the office of the general counsel. So you want to communicate with them that these changes are coming, what the changes are. They'll try to give you some advice, as if they can't give you anything over the phone, then they'll have to go to the office of the general counsel. So once you've done the opening inspections, that starts the Red Cross responsibility of the operation of that particular site. So we know that from the first section that we went, we have an address maybe of the site, but maybe it's with a school district or something of that nature. So you want to put in all the specific areas that Red Cross is responsible in this box area, which is on the bottom of that very first page. So you may have a number of different So this agreement, we working with all 4 of those school sites, if it's in the school district, whichever ones that Red Cross is actually using. Also, if you're getting a particular facility and maybe you're only using certain rooms, so you want to make sure those rooms are listed and not the rooms that were not being listed. If you're in a facility that has other organizations, that happened quite a bit at the campfire. We were at facilities with other organizations. At the end, when we were doing the closing inspections, they wanted to charge us for some damage that was done into those rooms. So we made sure that we had on our facility inspection that particular room belonged to a different organization. And so we passed along that information to that organization. So we want to be as detailed as possible of what areas we are responsible for in this facility section of the facility use agreement. Next slide. Okay, so there may be some requests for resources or amenities of the site: water, gas, electricity, and waste disposal. So Red Cross will only pay for those items that, if the Red Cross was not there, then whatever the Red Cross was being charged for. So if it usually will take the last 3 months of their water bill or their gas bill or electricity bill, and we'll even it out, and whatever over for the month that we were there, then that's the amount that we will be paid. So we will not be paying for their total monthly bill for that particular site. And for all the things that the site is requesting, we want to make sure that they initial in the owner's box, as well as the Red Cross representative will initial into their box. Be careful on these, if they are charging, especially a large facility, you want to always talk to them. This is the donated dollar, and try to talk them out of it a little bit. And most agencies will waive that fee, but make sure that you communicate with whoever has sign-in authority for your particular group, whether it's the AD of logistics, AD of operation, or the job director, and make sure that it is not a fee that could be very, very large. It depends on particular sites. Fairgrounds are very infamous for that type of charge. Okay, next. Okay, for the facility use agreement, we want to make sure what we will be using the site for. We're going to let the owners, they usually appreciate, we're letting them know that we're going to be needing it for parking, vehicles are going to be there, storage. Maybe it's a service delivery site, you're going to be distribution, emergency supply, or it's going to be a shelter location. So here, we're just communicating with the owner what was be going on at that particular site. And this next section is very, very important on the fees. Red Cross does not pay a rental fee for shelter locations. Red Cross does not pay for that. If they wish that they say that we want to charge for the use of the shelter, then that may be something that will go to the job director or external groups, our partner organizations, and they will communicate whether that's a fee or not. But that will not be charged to the Red Cross because we do not pay for that. If they do say that they want to initial in the fee section, then you want to make sure that you don't initial there. Once again, you're going to get with the signing authority, make sure that fee is something that we want to do. Once again, the fairgrounds, I think it was the Oroville Dam, one of the fairgrounds wanted us charges a couple $1,000s a day. We went all the way up to national for them to be able to sign that type of fee. So most of the times you want to get that area, assign the area that no fee will be charged. That's okay for anyone to be able to sign off in that particular box area. Okay. The next slide, please. Okay, and this is For the signature area, we know at the beginning, we talked about the owners. And so whoever is the representative that you're going over this agreement with, then they will sign off on this. Sometimes it can be done electronically. Well, it can be done electronically now, and these instructions that are on the new facility use agreement tells you how that procedure works. But once again, if it's a straight no fee, no charges whatsoever, even a facility service associate could sign off on a facility use agreement. If there's any fees involved, then we want to make sure whoever has the signing authority for that amount of money that's going to be charged signs off on the facility use agreement. And so this can be done electronically to make it speed up, which is a very, very, very helpful new step that's in the facility use agreement. Okay. Does anyone have any questions regarding the importance of the facility use agreement? Put that in chat. And was there any questions in the chat regarding it?
Yes. So one of the questions that we have is, how many facility agreements do we use? Do we use one for the general use of a facility, and we use another when we open a disaster relief operation?
If we open up we're there with the disaster. So if we have a Red Cross worker working inside that facility, so shelter, definitely we have Red Cross workers there, then we should be doing a facility use agreement. There are some working with another partner organizations, depending on who will be responsible, but that is something that we can talk over with the job director. But the basic idea is if we have a Red Cross worker working in that facility, we need to do a facility use agreement. Does that answer the question? I wasn't exactly sure regarding disaster.
I think he maybe means, Tom, if you have an existing steady state agreement, then you have a DR. Do you have to add another agreement? And the answer would be no, unless
right, yeah,
unless the DR is using part of the building that's not covered or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, just make sure that, like Chuck just said, that whatever is being utilized at the facility, we don't be responsible for the whole facility if we're only using 2 rooms, or maybe just the gymnasium and the kitchen or something of that nature. Was there another question?
Right, there are several questions.
Okay.
Where does this facility use agreement go? Does it stay at the shelter, or do we send it to the job director? Where does it go?
Yeah, all the documents regarding the facility are in the hands of the facility group, the logistics. They will keep all original documents. If shelter, we definitely want the sheltering to have a copy of the opening inspection to have with them at all times. They can also have a copy of the facility use agreement, but all the original documents have to be filed with the facility group, because finance will come and check our files. That is one thing. Finance will come and do an inspection on making sure that we have all the documents that are related to each facility available, filed, and downloaded.
Okay, another question that we have is, do the facility use agreement have an expiration date? Let's say that 5 years ago, during steady state, we signed an agreement with a school district, and now it's 5 years later.
Yeah.
Is, agreement still valid?
Yeah, there's sort of like a guideline of, if whoever is, you see there, the signatures, if one of the persons on the signature is no longer in that position, you might want to do another facility use agreement. Maybe some changes happen at the site, so you're probably every 2 to 3 years you should be contacting the site to make sure everything is the same contact people, the same names that are on the facility use agreement. So we want to make sure whoever is now responsible understands the guidelines of the facility use agreement and the restrictions and ways that Red Cross is going to be held financially responsible for repairs and those type of things.
So basically, it is best when we have an operation, when we start using the facility again, to sign an agreement at that specific time, just to make sure we're covered.
Yes, it's always good. Once you, the one that's on files, if you look at it, if it's the facility lead will look at it and see if it meets the needs of that particular disaster, all the communication, because a lot of times there's some guidelines on, remember I talked about that the Red Cross does not pay any rentals for shelter sites. There may be something on the agreement that says maybe this FEMA will or the state will or something of that nature, gives you extra information to go when you go out.
Okay, we'll take one more question, then we'll move forward. Do we need an agreement if we're just supporting a shelter being operated by a partner agency? What limits our liability when the Red Cross is in a support role?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's a case by case type situation. Like I said before, that we get the guideline that if you have a Red Cross person working in that facility, then we want to make sure that whatever damage that is caused by Red Cross is only going to be the responsibility of Red Cross, not the other groups. And so that's sometimes reason why we will do a facility use agreement. But there are some organizations says we will take full responsibility for all damages, whatever group is in the site, and so then we will pass that along to them.
Okay, thank you. I do know we have more questions, but we have 15 minutes remaining. Let's move forward.
Okay. Check the next slide.
Now I'm locked up again. Oh, here we go.
Okay. I think there was one more before that one. Oh, okay. The closing isn't in there. There it was.
Yeah, it's the third one from here.
Okay, it's further along. Okay, good. Okay, so we were asked how to properly treat facilities. Just a quick way of, it's very common of how we want to properly treat a facility. Remember, we are a guest. We do not own most of the facilities that we utilize under disaster relief operations. So we want to leave that site in as good or better condition than we received it, because we are a guest. If damages do occur, if you're working a shelter and damages do occur, it happens, reach out to facilities, and then they will reach out with the property owner to try to correct that problem sooner rather than later. So if we can correct the problem before we get to the closing, that's what we want to do. We want to correct it as quickly as possible. What shelters are we would like to know in logistics when from shelter when a shelter is opened, if more will be opening, have some closed already. We want to make sure that we have all the documentation in our files on each particular facility. As I mentioned before, finance will find out, and then they will ask us, where is the agreement for such and site that was closed 2 days at the start of the disaster. So we want to, any type of information that you can provide to us would help us to properly treat that particular facility. We want the facility owner to be pleased that the American Red Cross was utilizing, that they are pleased to offer the facility for their community as a shelter location. And so we want to make sure that they are treated with respect, and that we leave that, like I said, leave that site in good and better condition than received it. If there are damages, we want to make sure it's to the satisfaction of the owner. Okay, next slide. Okay, if additional services needed, maybe you need a dumpster service or porta potty, or bring that to the attention of facilities, and we will try to work with the existing maybe dumpster company to get additional days or any of that type of nature. But we will try to work with you at the shelter or facility to make sure that you have what you need, whether it's to go out and make agreement with a vendor or whatever it might be, or deal with a vendor that we're already using. We want to make sure that you're keeping a shelter inventory. So if you can bring that to the attention of the facilities when they do their inspections, or whether our life safety and asset protection, when they do their inspections, that maybe you borrowed some tables and chairs or of that nature. We want to make sure at the end of the operation that there's something that's left over, that we know where those things are supposed to go, what's left over. Most times are tables and chairs, or maybe there's nursing equipment or different type of thing. So we want to know what's at the site. If we bring in a one of those 52-foot trailers at a site, we want to know that that trailer is there. We even have the region's shelter trailer, the one that only has for 50 or 100 people of that nature. We want to know that that trailer is at that particular location also. We want to know in facilities what is at that location, so at the end we know where it's supposed to go, if it's still there at the end. Okay, and like I said, anything that we procure, whether it's the dumpster service or anything of that nature, we want to make sure that that's ready to go. We want to make sure that the site is extremely clean. If it's not clean already, then what arrangements has been made to make sure it is clean? Once again, to make that owner feel that the Red Cross was a great partner to work with, and so that we may have to use that facility again in the future. And if you are given any keys to the facility, make sure facilities is aware of that, and our life safety and asset protection is aware of that, so that we can make sure that those keys are accounted for. And as Chuck mentioned, our time for liability at a particular site is done when we do the opening inspection. Now, when we do the closing inspection, this is also called the release of liability form. So when we sign off on the last down there where it says we are no longer at that particular site, that's when our liability ceases at this particular site. So when we do the closing inspection with the facility owner, we're going to let them point out whatever they feel is discrepancy. If there are no discrepancies, then we're going to write into the body of this no discrepancy, and we can just get the signatures and fill in the blanks, and then that particular site has now been closed, making sure that everything has been removed, everything is clean. If there are discrepancies, then whatever has been noted, we're going to take pictures of that discrepancies. We're going to note the discrepancy. We're going to communicate with the owner of that facility and how to take care of that discrepancy. Will the owner take care of it? Does he want Red Cross to take care of it? Will we bring in a vendor to take care of it, a contractor, whatever it might be? When we want to make sure that that owner says, hey, we have a discrepancy and Red Cross is taking care of it, and we will make sure that once again we leave in that site is good or better condition than we received it. So the closing document is so extremely important in that this is when our responsibilities or at that particular site no longer, and they cease to exist, or a release of liability of anything that goes on that particular site. If we don't get this signed off and something happens even later, then they can come back and say it was the Red Cross. So the sooner we get this completed when the site closes, the better. Okay, are there any questions?
We do have a question. The question is, how do we keep track of loaned equipment over multiple staff deployments?
That's very good. That's a good point. That's why you should have, I believe the shelter keeps a log of equipment that's in there. We also have if it's loaned, we will have we have a resource record, the 6455. I think Jamshid is in here, so he is aware of that particular form. And so we want to make sure that we want to know everything that's on that site, whether it was brought in by Red Cross or brought in by a partner organization. I think I mentioned that I believe it was the Camp Fire where the state brought in sand for sandbags. We closed down a facility and the sand is in the parking lot. So they're not, the site doesn't know where this sand came from. So we had to go search on where the sand came from to remove it from the parking lot. The only names that the site has on files on any issues is the Red Cross, that because we did the agreement and open inspection. So they know who to contact in the Red Cross. They don't know where the sand came from. So we had to reach out to the state, and the state came and removed the sand from the parking lot.
We also have a question that from previous that if they only had an agreement that was specific to this DR, but not for steady state use, is that okay?
So the agreement for this DR would just be related to the DR. Then the region's facility person, they will work with that particular agency to make sure that there's one on file to meet the needs of a maybe something that may come up after a region response or a chapter type of response. So you're welcome to keep what the region will have all these hard copy documents available to them when the disaster relief operation is ended. We put it into a job box or a electronic job box, and so it is available to the region to go back to and see at any time.
Okay, thank you. And we had a lot of discussions about what tape to use to take down the tarps. So as the logistics specialist, you're the expert. What tape do you suggest that we use to tape down tarps?
I personally don't like the blue tape because it leaves a residue, even though it's not the sticky, but it still leaves a somewhat of a residue. But work with the site, and if we can maybe want to check it out just to make sure that the residue isn't too bad, then you can use the blue tape or look. I think there is a tape that doesn't leave a residue. I've used that in the past, but I can't for the life of me figure out what the name of it is right now. Maybe someone else knows what that is, but there is a tape that does not leave that residue. That's like a painter's tape. But you don't want to have a trip hazard. That's the big key.
Right. That's the big key, is you do not want to have a trip hazard. You want to tape all corners and make sure it's securely taped and everything. Okay, we have someone, Kimberly said it's frog tape. Is that what you were thinking?
Frog tape, is that what it is? Thanks. I had it, when in South Carolina, I had that where it was coming up, and actually the custodian at the site had some of this tape and we used it, and it worked great.
Okay, do we have any other questions? You're able to unmute now. If you have any questions, you can type in the chat. You can type, you can type in the chat. You can come off mute to ask questions.
See, we have a lot of facility people in the room.
Okay, Scott, you want to come off mute?
Okay, yeah, I guess my question is on small facilities where you have a wildfire evacuation and shelter. One of the questions was floor coverings in our trailers. Well, we don't have floor coverings stocked in our trailer. So would we use our P cards to purchase floor coverings? Or would that also come out of, supply?
It's a combination of type thing. Hopefully you can maybe have some stored in the warehouse that may be close by. We do have them in our disaster field supply centers to be able to bring in, but I know time is of an issue. Maybe there's an agency that you can borrow it. That's happened before, where there's a nearby agency that has floor covering that we can go to them and borrow it or whatever it might be. So it is going to be taking some time to research on how to do it efficiently and quickly in your particular situation. So you might want to think about that as something as a backup plan for your particular region. I know in my particular region, we do have a particular site that we could reach out to and ask to borrow it. And but it does take a little bit of effort.
Thank you very much.
And then another thing is for the steady state to prepare is part of the preparedness effort that, when you do your shelter trailers and inspect your shelter trailers during the steady state, that you want to make sure that you have all the supplies that you need. Then you can go on the logistic budget and you can, ask for approvals, etc. Okay, do we have any, I think I do see another hand. And Dave, you want to come off mute?
Yeah, hi, Tom. Dave Christensen
Hey,
here.
Dave.
Let's talk a little bit about using facilities for warehousing and for headquarters functions. How useful is the facility use agreement for that? I've run into a number of situations where the rental agent insists on using their own rental agreement and will not use our facility use agreement.
Yeah, and those things come up like every now and then. And so once again, you do need to, like I said, this is a legal document. If you use it as it is, it's a legal document signed, but any type of modification that's done, then it has to go to our disaster logistics center so they can take it to the Office of General Counsel. And the last couple of times that I've used it, it's gone a lot faster. So I don't know if they have those people on the general counsel people on call, but I got a response within the next day. But it does probably take you at least a day or two to get a response back if you're lucky.
Well, then I'm taking it then if the lease agent insists on using their own document and will not use our facility use agreement, then we won't take it. Is that correct? That's
without approval. It says in the facility standards and procedures that if we will send it to the risk management and the Office of the General Counsel. They will look it over. If they approve it, then we can use it. But I very rarely have seen that extensive. Usually we may use ours, and I've seen where that we put in a certain sentence that they had to have within their particular document. We put it in ours and they approved it.
Yeah, I was thinking of the car fire when we're trying to get the warehouse in
Reading.
You remember that?
Yeah, I learned from that one to get a little bit more detail on how that process works a little bit. And so, like I said, it was very, very slow during the car fire, but we used it last year for the your Gold Country fires. And I think we used it twice. And we got a response back with the wording very, very quickly. I think one time I asked about it in the morning, and by the late afternoon, I got a response back. They just changed one sentence in our facility use agreement. We were to put that, we had approval emails to make sure that we had the approval to do that. And so once we got that approval, we can, and the owner was happy.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. And I think I heard recently where sometimes if it gets really kind of that you can have the owner, there's actually some communication that can be done with the owner's legal part and Red Cross legal part. They can communicate.